name is Lishan. I'm with NTU LKC School of Medicine. I was actually, before I joined LKC, which was about 8-9 years ago already, for the prior 10 years to that, I was actually at polys as well. So I really enjoy coming and hearing about what polys are doing. So I was a bit upset when they told me I was a concurrent session. I was like, what? That means I have less sessions that I can go and attend and sit in on as well. But I already signed up, so it's too late to back up. But anyway, so I'm here to share a little bit about what we do. We've done team-based learning for 10 years, using, of course, a lot of tech support, and that's been improved over the years. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit about where we hope to go, I guess, in the future with AI and everything. So that's my synopsis. So, we've been doing TBI, as mentioned, now for 10 years, and initially we were partnered with Imperial College. So now our current first batch of first years are the first batch ever of students who are just going to have the NTU LKCMedicine MBBS. So we have actually kind of phased out we've kind of run to the end of our partnership. So our year 2 students will still graduate eventually, 4 years from now, with the Imperial MBBS, Imperial and NTU partnership, but our current year 1s are actually on a different program. So there have also been a lot of curricular changes that we've made, assessment changes, and a lot of that is somewhat tech-driven as well. I'm going to be sharing a bit about that later on. So we run large group TBL sessions. So everything that you would imagine other schools do in terms of lectures and tutorials, we do it all TBL style. So it's actually 60% of our curriculum in the first 2 years especially. And we have over 100 faculty. Some of them are clinicians from the NHG hospital group. So we have a campus in Novena, they'll just hop over from Tan Tock Seng. Or some of them will complain because then some of them travel NTU. Most of our year 1, year 2 sessions are at NTU. So it is a dual campus that we have. So we have a team teaching kind of system. So we have a team, currently I run a team of about 9 facilities. There's Jessica here is one of us as well. So students see facilitators often, and we are very sort of in touch with the whole pedagogy of TBL. And then we have some clinicians who come only once a year to teach once a year. So then they're less certain. Some of them are new even because sometimes one will kind of retire and have an understudy come in. So we kind of guide them through how this pedagogy works. So again, it's also because because we have a very big class that we need to do something like this. So students see a regular face on top of a clinician that sometimes they only see once a year. Also, some sessions we have something like 6 content experts who might be pathologists, anatomists, 1 clinician, 1 scientist, basic scientist, etc., etc. So that's quite a bit to manage. So we are the ones that can't pull everything together. So we run a lot of these. So we have about 60 to 80 TBLs per acad year for the year 1 and year 2s. So this is what it looks like. I think TBL is not very new now. I mean, we've been doing it for 10 years. We committed from the start that we wanted to do TBL. We wanted to do active learning. So as you can see, it's very much flipped classroom. We do have a white space in our students' kind of timetable where they are kind of given that space to prepare. So obviously some students are very fast at a certain topic, sometimes other topics they're slower. That's why flipped classroom works, right? Because you give the learners a lot more independence in terms of how much time they can take to actually learn things. So all the lectures are in the form of what we call voice over PowerPoints that are uploaded usually a week to 2 weeks before the lesson for the students to look through on their own, study on their own. So why do they have to study? It's because when they come to class, the first thing they do is a closed book test. So that's when, the first 20 minutes to 30 minutes of class, they're working on like 20 to 30 something questions. And it's completely silent. Even though they're seated in teams, they're taking it in the LMS and they're totally very quiet. After they work on these MCQs, then they do the exact same questions but this time as a team. And this part is interesting because this is when only the team leader gets to click. The team has to come to a consensus on what the best answer is. And if they click the answer wrong, they will see a cross and then they will have to try again. So of course, there has to be an impetus to get the answer right, as little tries as possible. So when it's the first try is 4 marks, the second try is 2, half of that, and then the third try is 1 mark, fourth try is not worth anything. So that's a part where suddenly the whole class becomes a huge bustle of activity. And also during this phase, you have students be like, I was very sure that I read that the answer to this should be C, like why is it B? So when they really cannot resolve it in their teams, they will do this thing where they write in their learning management system again what they call a burning question, so that later on they can seek clarification on the content experts are in. So of course after this phase, hitherto all the questions have been based on what they studied before. On that later part of the day, they are working on case-based, what we call application exercises. These are real-world case scenarios where they expand on the sort of factual knowledge that they had studied, and they put it together with research that they do online, with discussion, and just a lot more critical thinking in this application part. So this is just a repeat of what I just said. And as mentioned, we committed right from the start. So I invite any of you to contact me if you want to come visit. We're very proud of our spaces, our learning space that we purpose-built for team-based learning. We committed from the start, so we have these really nice rooms that can sit about 220 or more. But currently our biggest batch, our year 1 batch, we only have 186. I say only, but actually it's a lot. Because you have, less than half the room start whispering and it's actually quite noisy already. So there is quite a bit of classroom management, but again, that's why we do this team teaching where we have team-based learning facilitators familiar with the students and the pedagogy to kind of manage things in the classroom. Okay, so a little bit about how the technology actually helps us. We use this software called Labs, and over the years it's really improved a lot. I feel that they have really grown with us as well, especially through COVID and everything, when we really needed something that worked even remotely and not just face-to-face. So students do everything for TBL on this thing called Labs. So I know you guys use Canvas here, other schools maybe Blackboard. The one that we use is called Elantra. You all use Brightspace, is it? Okay. Yeah. So actually we're a bit, our medical school is a bit different from NTU as well, because NTU uses a version of Blackboard and we don't. So we use this thing called Elantra, but Labs is also integrated there. This is kind of what it looks like when the students are doing their individual test. So I think what looks really interesting is that little slider at the bottom and what that does. So especially when students are new to a group and they're new to working together, they tend to use this a lot more because you might have later on in the team discussion phase, right? This is the individual readiness assurance, so they're still doing individually. Later when they discuss as a team phase, they can actually see who in your team chose what option in their student interface, as well as how confident they were. So maybe 2 people chose B and they said they were very confident, and 2 people chose C and they were also very confident, but the one person who chose A was actually 100%, whereas the other 2 maybe only 50 or 40 or less. So that's kind of conversation starter. Why do you say you're so confident? Nobody else chose what you chose. Then maybe the person will be like, oh, I know that it said here this, but maybe 2 weeks ago you all remember we read something else in this other reading. Then maybe they'll trigger something else. So to us, it's a way in which we make sure that the consensus is more well thought out. Maybe even the quieter students, usually the majority can override, but in this case, there's a visual thing for them to start a conversation. Okay, so this is just the marks thing that I was mentioning earlier. So again, this is what I mean when I was talking about how, you can actually kind of see, okay, nobody's going to choose B at this point because these 2 guys neither of them are sure. Yeah. So, they will go with this one, but then in the end, it's not as correct. Yeah. So, and as you can see, there's this part at the bottom for burning questions, where they can decide. So, we always tell students that when you're choosing a team leader, choose someone who will listen and wait for your consensus. Don't just choose someone who will just click. But when you look at the pattern, because we monitor in real time how teams work, right, and the answers populating, there are some teams who will just tell the student they are the most confident in to be the leader, and they'll just click. And then after that, then they'll go back and be like, hey, actually question 3, why you click this one, I would have picked something else. But there's other teams who will just hash question by question by question by question. So it's also very interesting that LMS actually shows us team dynamics in real time. I'll show you the monitor view later on. So this is what we are seeing, right, in the back end as students are working on this individual test. So for example, obviously the red one sticks out because red indicates that less than 50% chose the correct option on the first try. So the correct answer here is appearing as the green one. And somehow a lot of them are choosing this. So when we click this, right, this thing will pop up. So when this thing pops up, we can see, oh, why are a lot of people choosing this? Is there something that is leading them astray to calculate in this way that they're getting this answer? So if there's usually more than one content access, they'll be having a discussion already. What do they think this? Is this some misconception that we have to clear up and things like that? So it's like what the back-end data is telling us. So as mentioned, right, this is when they do it as a team. And this shows us the order in which they are choosing the correct answer. So from here already we are seeing, like just now I clicked on question 6, right? So this is the live page. And look at that question again. And again, it's very reflective of what we saw in the IRAT phase as well. A lot of them are choosing A first. So if I click 6, this happens, right? It will pop up again the question. And then you see they're all asking this question. So again, this gives us we really drive forth this professionalism thing in medical school because they have to do with patients and all, right? So again, this batch that I pulled this data from, there are year ones, and year ones this year are very sometimes I don't know. There's a thing with cohorts. Some cohort, the whole cohort, you're like, I really like school. Some cohort, you're like,
quickly graduate.
yes. Or if I go clinic, I see you, like you turn up. That's just how it is. But our year ones are very, don't quote me on that. But
we all know
on film. But
let's edit that out.
But this is very nice for us just to have everything built in so that we can discuss everything. So later on I'll share about how we try to use things that are not actually built in and how it's just a lot tougher. Okay, so all these things help us to facilitate. So even in the, of course, COVID days, it really helped us a lot as well because we were just having all these things up as we display on Zoom, and we know which teams pick what answer. And going back to this previous thing, right? We can always say, team 4, can you answer whichever team? Can you answer team 7's question? But they're also not sure actually, even though they got correct. So they were checking lah. So we can ask them to explain as well. Why did you think that this is the reason why B is correct? So there's many ways that you can run this discussion when you have all these data. Sometimes you can even ask the students, why did you choose this particular sequence to choose your answers in? So it's really a lot of rich discussions that you can pull out. So everything up here indicates that the number of learning questions. So this is a live page. I will click it and it will show me all the learning questions there. We also have actually another page which I didn't pull up that shows all the learning questions together at a glance, which usually we also will display that page if it's easier to talk to students. So this is an example of an application question when students have to put together the knowledge from what they learned in the IRAT and TRAT into answering a question like this. And the student answers will be displayed kind of like this. Of course, the green shows the correct answer already, but before we actually have huge discussion, we don't show the green. So this is kind of after the fact. So we might go and ask first, team 21, why did you choose B? And then we'll ask team 25, why did you choose C? And then there'll be a huge discussion usually. And in this case, once we click display the correct answer and that highlights, usually there's a huge uproar. Because it's very seldom that the majority is wrong. So this actually indicates a very good question. Well-written questions are like that. They will actually give students this like, what? Kind of feeling. So, students older past 10 years, this is class of 2018. So she is from the first graduating batch. She's been a doctor for a while already. And the TBL, this is the way that we run it for 10 years with some improvements here and there. But more or less, cut and dry is very much the same thing, and it still worked and it's still working. So now we have increased our batch, our first batch from this 2018, there were 60 of them. Now we have 186 and it's still working well. So where does AI fit into all of this? And what's happened this year and where is it going? So just to share what we're doing with AI now, I think the three main things that's going on in our school is question generation, tutor, as well as research assistant. I think the tutor and research assistant part sort of overlap in a way. I'm not going to go too far into research assistant yet because this is more what our year 4s and up to for the various research projects. For year 1, year 2, still very much classroom focus of AI use. So as a question generator, I mean, there's been a lot of studies done already, and the tips and tricks, and I think that you can very easily find all of these up for yourselves. So I'm not going to go into too much detail for this. The one big issue is that a lot of our materials are actually proprietary materials. So I think the big concern is very often your copyright. If I'm going to upload even learning outcomes, I'm going to upload my material and ask them to generate questions, then my material is going into LLM, right? So I think that's one of the big concerns now. So actually, one of the things that we are doing is we are actually, there's some people who are trying to work with NTU as well to kind of create their own question generator to see how that works. But actually, our LAMS, right, already does it. And the thing is, we don't have this version of LAMS yet, but the developer has given just me and Jessica, because we do a lot of training and all that, to actually have versions to play with. So I sometimes use it to think of questions for my training development workshops. And I've also been trying to get our people on board to pay for this part of the licensing of LAMS. But just let me show you a little bit. I took a little screen grab of how it actually does it. So you can see it actually, you basically just click, I want a TBL lesson. And then you tell it what kind of lesson it should be. So you give it a title. So it just basically literally prompts you and handholds you every single step of the way. It will then ask you to put your file in. So are there security issues? The thing is, we're already going with LAMS with all our materials, so they are quite good with ring fencing as well as making sure all their compliance and security things are updated every single year. I know because the developer will complain to me when it's that season, he's like, very busy with instruments. But yeah, so it's also very interesting that if you don't have learning outcomes, it will actually say it can derive it for you later. But you can also just copy and paste yours inside. And I've tried the give me outcomes later. It's not that it actually kind of works as well. And it doesn't give you the flaky outcomes that I described, it does give you those action word outcomes. So it's quite clever at this point already. It is built, I think, on GPT 3.5. Okay. So it will give you questions. What we found about the options, right? When you expand, it gives you the options. What we found is very often the options are too obvious, which is the right and wrong answer. So you will still need a human to go and rewrite those options. But I think the fact that it can give you questions is a bit of a thumb for you. It gives you that kind of inspiration, a springboard to start. So I'm trying to get them to help with, I guess, a lot, for us, because now we're using, I'll talk about this later as well, now we're using our IRATs as part of programmatic assessments. And eventually students will start to complain that some people are getting answers from their seniors, etc. So then we were always pushing for our content experts to write more questions, have a bigger question bank. And this is one of the ways in which I think we can encourage them to form a question bank more easily. Yeah. So now
form it here and get them to edit the questions.
Correct. Or they can just go in and use it because it's so easy to use, right? And then now it's saying, here are some application exercises because you asked it to make you application exercises. So there's two ways that it does this. One is kind of an open-ended box. And the open-ended box works very well for smaller tutorials, smaller class sizes, because then you have the time to go through. But what's interesting here is that if you want a certain part to be kind of expanded upon, right? So you can tell me, write me a brief description of soil carbon sequestration. And it will actually do it. So if there's a certain part that you want it to expand on, the AI will actually write it for you. Yeah, so it's really, really quite smart now. And as mentioned, right, when wanting to do an open-ended box, it will look like Google Docs. But Google Docs is all anonymous. This one will have the students' names, so you know who said what. And you even have a playback function in the monitor view, right? Such that if you see suddenly they copy a whole chunk, you know they copied and pasted it. Yeah. And it's also when the students are answering, they can, kind of take picture of their own diagram to put in, or they can pull in pictures or diagrams from other places. So it's a very nice kind of box that students can use to formulate an answer as a group. The other thing that it does is, so for TBL, actually, especially for large classes, we always like to drive single best answer. We like our SBAs very much because it's just a lot more efficient when you run a big size class. So what we actually like to do is we will click I don't know whether you saw just now, there was a questionify button. That will just generate single best answer MCQs based on this long story on the case. So, and again, if you find that the options are too close, we always have to go back and human check to make sure that it's better with that. Yeah, see, so now this thing is clicking the questionify. And it's going to show you the MCQs. So if you expand those, they've all been made into MCQs. Yeah. So yeah, and then after you are done, fast forward a little bit. Yeah, see, it's all MCQs very nicely. You tell it that I'm done, thank you, and then set it to one more set, and it actually generates a nice little intro blurb for you. And you click on the button and poof, it's right inside your learning management system, ready for students to populate into the learning design. So I'm like, please pay for this so that everything will be easier to administrate, but we have to convince for funding and everything, then I have to go and bargain with the developer a little bit, but that's how things work. So I guess one of the points here being made is that the more things are integrated, the easier and more user-friendly in the sense it will become. And I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of the tutor thing. So, yeah. So we also have LLM being used as a tutor, and right now we are doing a few different things in the school. So the anatomists have been building their own chatbot, but it was some grant that was funding that. And anatomy chatbot is, anatomy is taught in diagrams. And until now, I think that chatbots and all this, they're still not great at processing diagrams. They can make you beautiful pictures. But in terms of explaining through a diagram, they're not quite there yet. Or explaining what you see in the diagram, they're not quite there yet. So our site, TBL, what we did is we partnered with colleagues from NTU's Atlas Consumer Department, and they were actually developing a chatbot that other schools were already using. They're already testing. So we signed up to be a tester, but our use case is very, very different from the rest, I think, because if you remember, right, our team-based learning sequence is such that there's this burning questions part. And we cannot have the chatbot open all the time because we don't want them to use the chatbot to answer the IRATs or TRATs for sure. So we could only open the IRAT after the burning questions and such that they can go and do their research and use it as sort of a tutor, not just use Google, the usual Google research. So then the chatbot, of course, will be trained with our own materials, and we are not uploading our materials into your OpenAI or whatever. So this is what the Nala thing looks like on the back end when we actually just plug in all our course aims, and then we plug in all our materials. But again, we can only put in PDFs, and then even though it has all our PDFs and all our diagrams, it may not be able to read the diagrams. So that's one weakness already. The other one is these are the PDF versions of our voice over PowerPoint lectures. But the thing about lectures is that a lot of these lectures actually are voice over that might actually give additional information to what is on the slides in just the PDF. So there's a few points of disadvantages already. This is the student view of what the QGB will look like. And they kind of put in a query. So the other limitation is just like the normal GPT. I think there's about 12 exchanges. So it will respond to you 6 times. And then it will kind of refresh and you another sort of limitation that we have with it. So yeah. Also, because it's separate from our labs, we tried to ask the labs guy to build it. He was actually very excited about the idea, but he was like, then he gave us the code and we're like, yeah, the code was again quite staggering. But the problem is that when it's something that students have to tab out to use, it becomes very clunky because it's all these windows. And the chatbot, right, it's not very reliable. It's really, I know it's a fraction of what the LAM's code was. The cost, because it's our own in-house one, is really, really cheap. But then, as a result of its kind of not very stable thing, like it will just give you an error message if you leave it open for too long. And then they ask you to refresh. Students are not going to do that because they have been used to Googling anyway, their own Google searches. They're just going to default to that rather than patiently keep refreshing all these stuff. So I think there's really a lot to be said for proper integration, because then it will nicely appear in their burning questions page, where they can then respond to it, and then everything will be displayed as part of the labs interface, right? So that's the other thing that we're trying to get. So going forwards, we do want to work with our own anatomy team, because they're telling us that their grant is actually running out. They're looking for other things that they can do in order to further develop their chatbot. And I think that would be nice to just have at least one topic where it's reading images well. Trying to get our funding through, hopefully. And also, the other thing that can be used for is maybe for open-ended responses, there can be sort of AI marking of student responses and provision of feedback. Actually, LAMS also already has this one, which kind of works very well, similar to what FeedbackFruits is showing earlier. So, as research assistants, I think this is very similar to what our TP colleague was showing earlier on, using the LLM as a thematic analysis tool. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here as well. So this is what we're using in terms of the LLM for all these various things, some things more than others. And it's always a work in progress. So these are the various things that have been lessons and kind of key considerations in terms of looking at what are the things we need to pay attention to. So I think the big thing for me is always user experience and integration, because if nobody's going to use it, then it becomes another, white elephant, so to speak, right? So I mean, we want users to use it comfortably. Also, when you integrate more things into one LMS, people say you're putting all the eggs into one basket, but I think that also renders more security, because if all your material is going to be in there, then it's really all ring-fenced in there anyway. You're not so worried about copyrights and things like that. So I think at the end of the day, we really need to continue understanding. I think our students understand that as well, that the AI, our students for the most part don't seem to be using AI to so-called copy. I think a lot of them, they know better, and there's a certain standard anyway that make it to medical school, so they don't usually resort to using AI in such ways. So a little bit about programmatic assessment, because I did mention I would talk about this. This is something that we started actually just with this current batch that just came in. And because the previous system, so the year 2s onwards, right, their system is very much focused on summative assessments, not so much formative. But then you realize that in medical school, the whole curriculum and everything, there's so many data points, and it's actually so rigorous that why aren't we using all those other points of data to assess our students when it's all already there? So we drove this this was driven by our current Vice Dean Education, something she was very passionate about, and wanted to make sure that it would give them kind of a more well-rounded sense of where their competencies and maybe weaknesses lie as well. This is all about more emphasis on feedback and reflection, because again, there's a lot more data points. And then this came along with a learning progress dashboard that we created, and this is integrated into the Elantra interface that I talked about. And students kind of access this to be able to track their own progress. So this had to be aligned with MOH's outcome framework, obviously, which is patient care, medical knowledge, interpersonal communication skills, professionalism, practice-based learning, improvement, system-based practice. So there's a lot of things going on, a lot of things that students needed to know in order to be able to graduate MBBS. And this was then kind of placed into this Miller's pyramid framework as well. So it's sort of a double framework mapped together. And because we have this assessment system now, there's so many in-course assessments, we're going to start using some of these assessment points to be able to, I guess, in the end of the day, provide more feedback to our students as well. So this is what it looks like, where SBAs, again, single best answer like in TBLs. Our IRATs are one example of SBAs. Written assignments are sort of, sometimes they have a certain hospital placing, for example, for a whole week. At the end of the week, they might be asked to write a reflection on their placement. So they're being graded on this as well. And then, of course, there's things like their OSCEs, which is their objective structured clinical exams. There's also a formal OSCE where they have to do at the end of the academic year as well. That one is part of their summative assessment. So workplace-based assessments are also now included. Peer feedback is part of team-based learning as well. So they're actually assessing their team-based learning team, and they do this 3 times a year. Actually, I don't know what they use now. I know they used to do it, I think maybe on Qualtrics or something like that. But I actually don't know what platform they use now. And that's kind of why I'm here to check out FeedbackFruits and stuff to see whether there's something there that can be done, or whether they should ask the LAMS guy to do something. Yeah. So this is what our learning progress dashboard looks like. I wasn't able to get a real student stuff populated, but these are the various components that are inside. And these are actually the things that go into, again, they are what we call the growth and achievement metric. So a lot of these, like TBLs, right, they're considered kind of low stakes because they don't actually go into their final summative grade, but they are actually used to differentiate between distinction and merit students. But the thing is, when you are a high-performing medical student, right, you want to grab at every mark, and you want to grab at everything. So you find that a lot of our students are still continually anxious even about their day-to-day things. But again, this is why, again, we need to encourage our content experts to refresh their questions more, because when they are so kiasu about just wanting that every mark, there's also this tendency to want to get yeah. So actually the other things that we've done, because IRAT started to become used for programmatic assessment, is we started to shuffle the questions as they appear and shuffle the options. So those are a few of the things that we have done to kind of try to avoid any sort of cheating or anything. Okay. So peer feedback is something that we do in years 1 and 2, and this is very much tied to sort of professionalism in medical students, because the idea is that when you go out into your workforce and you're a doctor, there is going to be a lot of this 360 feedback going on in your workplace. So it's all about professionalism, teamwork skills, and being able to provide good feedback. So where does the feedback go, and how does it feedback into their kind of performance later on? Our school has this system called houses, like Harry Potter. So we started with 5, now because of the increased intake we have 7, 8? 8. We have 8 houses now. And each house is named after a famous scientist or famous doctor, like Wu Lian-Teh or Marie Curie and things like that. So every house has a certain number of students all through the years, and there will be a house tutor. It used to be a ratio of 1:5, I think, at the start, but now we've had to expand a lot. So I think every house tutor looks after about 8 students of the previous years. And of course, the students that are under them, they also kind of look out for each other. There's a kind of mentorship model for the older ones to the younger ones. And the house tutors are mostly also clinicians or other faculty or other staff from LKC, or even those that are not actually our faculty, but are maybe clinicians or other people in the healthcare community. They can also sign up to be house tutors. And these are people who actually look at the student feedback and see with so many data points. So if a student is kind of falling off a certain module, actually the house tutor can see that and usually will reach out to the student and just be like, hey, are you okay here? Do you need help? Do you need guidance? Do you need more support in some way? Or even some years ago, I actually saw one student literally before my eyes. She was just shrinking. And I didn't want to say anything to her because I didn't want to. Because if I'm commenting on your weight, it's not very nice, right? It's not very woke. So I actually, reached out and got in touch with a house tutor who actually kind of had a very private conversation. Are you very stressed? Something going on? And just to make sure that she's eating right and she's looking out for herself. So we do have to have a lot of this kind of safety nets and also a lot of points of contact between kind of staff members, faculty members in school and students individually to make sure that this very high stress environment that they're still feeling supported. And all these data points are what help us. So what's in the next 10 years? I didn't really know how to end. So I quoted my dean, I cannot go wrong, right? But I guess, we being a medical school, I think we know that our students are clever, we know that they're smart, we know that they will know how to use AI. I think the question here is, we still need to, I guess, impart compassion, empathy, and these are all the very human things. Good patient communication, remaining patient-centered throughout. I think these are the things that we also need to model. I think being student-centered, well, they are our students so that they can be patient-centered with their patients in the future. These are all the things that I think we really are still wanting to drive forward. So we use all this technology to support us and to help us. But at the end of the day, being a doctor, short of like telemedicine or whatever, it's still about having that sort of way to communicate with your patients in a way that you are empathetic or empathic. Sorry. Yeah. So some of these slides were done by my colleague. Just wanted to acknowledge Dr. Olivia who's not here today. And these are my references. A lot of them. Whatever people are interested in, I don't know. And this is our information video. It's a little bit outdated because it's my predecessor on it introducing our TBL. It's just a YouTube video link. We are actually filming a new one 2 weeks from now. Yeah, but so this is our video in case you want to see more. And thank you very much for your attendance.